guys, and welcome back to the channel. This is TheSketchMonkey here. I'm back at Urban Motors to have a look at the 8th generation Golf GTi. This one in moonstone gray. I love the color of this thing. So what we're gonna do in this video is have a look at this design, because there's a couple of things in the front end that when this first came out, I redesigned right here on the channel. But I'm gonna let you know what I think about the front now that I've seen it so many times in real life, and if it's grown on me or not. We're gonna have a look at the front, the side, the rear, the interior, and then we're gonna take this for a drive. And yes, this is the 6-speed manual. Let's have a look at some of the basic spec and tech of the Golf GTi. You have a 2-liter turbocharged 4-cylinder. This is connected to a 6-speed manual transmission. Power goes to the front wheels. You have 241 horsepower and 273 pound-feet of torque. 0 to 60 is done in 5.4 seconds. Fuel economy sits at 24 city, 34 highway, and the pricing for this one is $30,000. Let's start with the front end design of the Golf GTi. What I love about the front end here is the classic Volkswagen graphics that we have. Volkswagen, they have a design philosophy that every single curvature, every single line on their car needs to have a purpose and a function. I think that shows here. Overall, it's a very restrained design, and they've had that same design language from the very first Volkswagen Golf, and it comes back here in the latest generation. I do love that we have the old school GTi badge with the old school font here in the middle. The way you can tell that this is a GTi, not just by looking at the badge, but also this red stripe that we have in the front end also tells you that this is in fact a GTi. A couple of things that I was not too happy about when I first saw this design was that I thought this top end, the hood and the headlights, they looked like they're tilted too far backwards and doesn't have this forward angle to them. So what I did in the redesign was just tilt this, all the graphics, tilt them up a little bit and not have this sloping surface that we have from the hood going into the main graphics in the top part. But now that I've seen this a lot out on the streets and also right now, I kind of feel like it's grown on me, and it suits this generation to have this more slanted front face in the top part with the big, this is absolutely huge, the Volkswagen logo that we have right in the middle. I've always been a fan generally of Volkswagen's design just because of their philosophy to keep things simple. And I love this hood line that we have cutting in through the hood into the cut on the front end of the headlight right here, having a connection to the key graphic features or key lines that we have in the hood and have that connect somehow in the front end design. I think that's beautifully done. You can also see that these headlights look like they've been carved out or pushed into this front end, because underneath here you have a nice chamfer housing it as a base of the front graphics, specifically the headlights. And I think it's nice to have that 3D effect looking at these headlights like they've been pushed into the bumper. Moving further down, I'm not entirely sure about this black mustache that we have going around the lower section of the grille, but we do have some very cool integrated fog lights here. You see these patterns that we have, a part of these patterns are actually the fog lights down here, and it looks very cool and very unique when you see this at night. There's no mistaking this car for anything else than a 8th generation Volkswagen Golf GTi. Coming around to the side view of the beautiful Golf, and with this moonstone gray color, in this case we do have some aftermarket wheels. These are 225 millimeter wide tires with 18-inch bronze wheels, and I do like this setup with the bronze wheels, the gray color of the exterior, and then you have the red calipers as well. But let's have a look at the super tight and crisp, sharp design that we have of the Volkswagen Golf in a side view. We have this shoulder line cutting into the graphics of the taillight and then going through the door handles, both front and rear, and then into this GTi logo or badge that we have in the front end. Nothing functional about this, but I still think it looks good because we have some of that red from the front end specifically for the GTi coming back here in the side view. The magic of the side view of Golfs though, they happen in this area right here. You see these two lines, one here cutting into the door and the second one here, creating this very thick C-pillar right here. And this is part of Golf's design identity from the very early beginning. And if you don't have this panel on a Golf, I don't think you can call it a Golf, because it's such an important design feature of any Golf up until today from the very beginning. One detail though that annoys me quite a lot is just the cut line of the rear door, because have a look at how it cuts into this chamfer that we have here. It kind of barely cuts into it, and then you have the chamfer going around here. I'm not sure if I would solve it by having a curvature for the cut line, but then again, that would make more unnecessary styling for Volkswagen, and that's not at all what they're about. So I understand why they made it straight through this chamfer, but at the same time, I wish they could have avoided cutting into the chamfer and just have one single clean chamfer around the wheel. Overall, I think the Golf, the hatchback version of the Golf, is one of the tightest looking packages of hot hatches today, specifically the Golf GTi and of course the Golf R. I do want to mention this line here. So it has almost like a dual shoulder line. You have this line in the front end, which goes underneath the greenhouse and fades in this area. And then of course you do have this main shoulder going down here. So it creates a very structural looking design in addition to this lower section, typical German line at the bottom that cuts through the rear axle and then also comes back in the rear bumper. Coming around to the rear end design of the Golf GTi, the same type of philosophy that we have all around the car of course comes back in the rear. And one detail I love here is how this transition from this top part of the graphics then goes in with this gorgeous chamfer right here smoothly into the bumper. And by the way, don't mind the plate that sits right there. That's just a temporary plate from the dealer. It's supposed to sit down here obviously, but for some reason it's stuck up there for the moment. Now looking at these taillight designs, same thing here. We have some connection from the lines in the body itself, in the metalwork, coming back in the lines of the taillights. Absolutely stunning. Specifically this line right here that curves into the taillight and then creates a part of this chamfer that we just talked about coming into the bumper. The Golf GTi is going to go into the category of favorite views, being the 3/4 rear view. I just think it looks fantastic with the roof spoiler up top. Yes, we do have a wiper right here, but keep in mind you can get a Golf GTi for about $30,000, and for that price point I don't mind having the wiper stuck onto the windshield. Even though everything else is so clean, I wish they could have hit it up there, but it's not a big deal, and we still have the same retro GTi badge coming back here in the rear, which I absolutely love. Moving further down, you do have dual exhausts on the GTi. You have quad exhaust on the Golf R. I think both look good. I also think it looks great in chrome. Not sure why. Maybe it has to do with the connection to the logo and the vintage badge down here having some chrome in it and coming back in the exhaust pipe. But these are not exhausts that I would like to change to black. I actually think they look perfect, classic with the round chrome exhaust that we have in this case. Before we jump into the interior, I have to show you the straight rear view of the Golf because I think it looks pretty planted. Disregard the plate. I'm just gonna make it disappear like that, like magic, so you can see clearly what this design is all about. I love these fenders and this line having a connection to the side, and then the side lines having a connection to the rear end. So we have a nice package when it comes to the styling of the surfaces and line flow all around this car, and that's what I love about the Golf. Welcome to the very interesting interior of the Mark 8 Golf GTi. Let's fire this up so we get some AC blowing in here. So let's start with this infotainment screen here. This is a 10-inch infotainment screen, and there are absolutely no buttons for the most important features. Instead, everything is housed within the software itself. So for example, if you want to pop up the climate control, you have to hit this Klima button down here, and then you have this fan speed here, for example, and you have the controls for the temperature at the bottom. You also have the settings for the heated seats in 3 different stages. What I would like to do is, you know what I would like to have here, not everything being housed within the software, because imagine if you're driving this thing and you're out on the highway or even on a twisty road, is even a better example, and you want to quickly change the temperature or the fan speed. You have to first click Klima, and then you have to go and slide the fan speed or click on the plus and minus signs on the touchscreen. So you don't know exactly where you're clicking. You need to look at the screen to know exactly what it is you're adjusting. And up top, you have all the settings for where you want the air to blow. The screen itself, there's nothing wrong with this screen and the sensitivity and responsiveness of the screen. I like the design of it, the user interface, and the responsiveness of this thing, but I do wish that we did have some climate control buttons at the lower section here that you can just toggle and press whatever you want. Moving further down, we do have some very traditional looking air vents. I do like that they're integrated in the overall design and flow of the interior here. Looking pretty clean, super easy to adjust as well. And you have a couple of buttons here. You have the hazard lights, you have the parking assist button, and you have the menu for the parking, and you have the camera setting, and you can pop up the reverse camera if you want that with the Park 360 parking sensors to the left. And you also have the button for the drive modes here. So you have Eco, Comfort, Sport, and you can make a custom setting if you want that. I'm going to keep it as you know, and this being a GTI, of course I'm going to keep it in sport. I do like that we have this golf ball texture here, bringing it back to the original Golf. And moving further down, we do have a wireless charging pad here with a very 45-degree angle, steep angle here, so your phone is definitely not going to fly away when you put this in first and hit the gas. Now, the cool thing about Golf GTIs is they still come with a manual 6-speed transmission. This is an aftermarket shift knob here, which I think looks pretty good. I mean, it does have this carbon fiber texture to it. I would probably prefer to have it be the original. And you also have this engine start-stop button here, and the parking brake is also located right behind the gear shifter. Further back on the center console, you do have a cup holder that is adjustable in size, very German in this engineering here. You also have a simple cigarette 12-volt outlet located right here in the center. Talking about this armrest, it is fabric with the red stitching that we have on the seats coming back in the armrest right here. You can lift this up. It's also adjustable, so if you just want to have it in this height, you can adjust it to have it like that. If you want to fold it all the way back down, just go all the way back up and then fold it down. And it's also adjustable in length. So this is a pretty cool little armrest that you have here for the Golf GTI. And we have to talk about these seats. These are definitely the seats that I would pick for my Golf GTI. They're not the leather ones. They're not the super sporty ones, I don't believe. I think these are the basic seats because they have the same fabric in the middle like we have in the original Golf GTI. And I love that about this generation Golf, that they brought this back. I think they had it in the previous one as well, and I love that they still have this in production. The seats themselves have pretty aggressive bolstering on the side. You have some Alcantara or suede materials on the sides in combination with this fabric in the middle, looking very clean and very classy. Moving on to the steering wheel. This is a fantastic looking steering wheel. First of all, we do have some tactile click buttons, so they're flush. The buttons themselves don't really move, but you hear a click, you can feel a click when you're hitting the buttons here. And on the right side, you do have the buttons for everything that has to do with the gauge cluster. You can change the view to have it be full map, or you can have it in this super sporty setting, for example, which I love the gauges that pop up when you have it in this, with the tachometer centered in the middle and the Golf all pattern behind it, looking fantastic. If you want, you can also have a full map when the navigation is enabled. You also have the buttons for the voice command right here. And on the left side, you do have the controls for the volume, and also the cruise control buttons are located on the left spoke. Further down, we do have some of this red coming back in the interior as well, in the steering wheel. I do love that, and we also have the same retro GTI letters down here at the bottom of the steering wheel, and it is fat. I do like that we have different perforations on the area where you're going to keep your hands when you're doing some sporty driving, in addition to the soft leather and smooth leather that we have on the top and on the bottom of the steering wheel, and it is a flat bottom steering wheel. To the left of the steering wheel, all the buttons for the light settings are located right here. Same kind of buttons that we have for this section in the middle, and the buttons that we have in the steering wheel. Not necessarily buttons, but as I said, you feel a click and you hear a click when you're pressing these type of buttons. Moving up top, we don't have a sunroof in this Golf GTI, which I don't know why, but it feels pretty surprising not to have a sunroof in a Golf. But as you know, I don't care about sunroofs, so that is all good. And we also have a pretty decent sized glove box for this type of pack. Moving on to the door, very basic layout of the door. Typical Golf and Volkswagen design. As we talked about the exterior design, everything having a function, that definitely comes back in the door design as well. Nothing wrong with that, it still looks good and it's definitely functional. Let's jump into the back seat and check the space here behind my own driving position. And as you know, I'm 6'1", I have plenty of leg room and also plenty of headroom with this sporty sloping roof design, which is pretty impressive. You have two small pockets up here, one big at the bottom, same thing on the passenger seat, and further down there's not a lot going on here. You have two vents, you don't have any AC controls back here whatsoever, but you have two vents and two USB-C ports. And when you fold down this center armrest, you're going to get a pretty comfy armrest in the middle, in addition to two beautiful cup holders. Alright guys, setting off in the 2022 Golf GTI. Every single time I jump into a car that has a manual gearbox, I get a little bit excited. It doesn't matter if it's a 1995 Mazda Miata, or in this case, a Golf GTI. And this thing goes, man. It's not slow at all. It only has 241 horsepower. Front-wheel drive, obviously, for the GTI. If you want four-wheel drive or all-wheel drive, you're gonna have to go with the Golf R, which is probably something that I would do because the price differences for a well-spec'd Golf GTI almost overlaps with a Golf R. So personally, just because of the all-wheel drive, I would go with the Golf R. But this is still a very fun car to drive, and I love that we have the 6-speed manual. Such a fun manual to drive. And it sounds great too, even though it's just an inline 4. It does have the turbo. You do feel a slight bit of turbo lag, which is just adding to the fun of driving this car, in my opinion. It's just a beautiful driving experience, this thing. And this is definitely a small car that you just want to take up the mountains and just go have fun with on a curvy road. All right, so we're in first. We're going 10 miles per hour. So let's floor it here and let's see what this got. Definitely feels lively, that's for sure. And it almost feels like it has a little bit more than 240 horsepower. And what's surprising is there's no torque steer, which you maybe would expect when you have this much power only being sent to the front end. But it's super stable even when you floor it from first gear, which is fantastic. The road noise in here is quite high. It's quite loud. I'm not sure if that's the aftermarket wheels and tires that we have on here, but it definitely is a bit louder than I would expect it to be. And I know not everybody is a fan of this interior that we have here, but at least they stuck with, you know, a proper looking gauge cluster, which, by the way, the graphics in here for this price point, it just looks absolutely fantastic to have the customizable gauge cluster that we have here. And you also have the 10-inch infotainment screen, which I do wish that they did have some physical buttons for, you know, the most important settings, so you don't have to do a two-step process of going into the software just to change the fan speed. It just doesn't make sense to me. Big thanks again to Urban Motors for providing this Golf GTi for me to review for you guys today. If you're interested in this vehicle, go and check them out at urbanmotors.com. I'm gonna link their full inventory down there. And thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.